Welcome back, everyone, to our lockdown conversations. This is the third one in the series, and I'm very privileged to chat with Shifu Lucia Ring-Watkins. And Lucia was when I came back from my first trip in Wudang, learning Wudang arts with Master Bing, coming back to UK, not knowing where to go next. Lucia was the first person that I found to help me continue my journey, and so it was very, very important. So Lucia, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe I'll start off the same ways in the previous interviews and ask you about your particular journey to train in Wudang Martial Arts. So maybe if you describe from the before time, either training in different, I know you trained in Pai as well, didn't you, briefly? And so maybe describe your experience pre-Wudang to the point where you identified yourself as a Wudang practitioner.
Sure. So I started out Tai Chi probably a couple of years after I left university. I studied philosophy. I was interested in esoteric thought systems and meditation and things like that. And I went to train Kung Fu, a flashy style, after not having done much exercise as a child, and I hurt myself. So I thought a friend of mine was doing Tai Chi, a guy called Faisal Mian. And he would go on about it all the time, so much so that it bored me actually. But however, he made me aware of its existence. So I thought, I'll go and try this slow, boring Tai Chi, get myself a bit fitter, and then I'll go back and do the flashy stuff. And I tried it and I just fell down a rabbit hole, basically. It really grasped me from the beginning, the impact on my body, my mind, my relationships with people and the world around me. And I really got into it in a big way. So Tai Chi was really my first martial art.
And can I just interrupt you there, Lucy? Can you remember that moment? Can you remember the edge of the rabbit hole and the embodied experience of finding something that then motivated you to devote your life to it subsequently? Could you share a memory of that lesson or that time?
I guess I remember the first time I felt chi. And when I felt it and saw it, actually, I remember that lesson in a big hall and just feeling something in between my hands and in between my arms and going, wow, what's this? What is this? This is something different. I'm tapping into something here. And also for me, it was in the interaction with my environment. So I guess a feeling that I'm on a path that's moving with me. So fortuitous events occurring that kind of allow me to walk along the path smoothly, the feeling that you're going in the right direction, that sort of thing. And those kind of events around me were increasing, my own sensations were increasing. And I also just love the community, actually, just being part of a group of people training. Yeah, so that was my personal rabbit hole.
And what were your next steps?
So I trained in London a lot for 3 years, and that included a trip to Thailand just after the tsunami, when I was so gripped with the Tai Chi. I was like, everybody needs to train this, everybody needs to do it. These people, they've had a terrible, unfortunate incident. I'm going to go and teach them Tai Chi. So that was probably my first step outside of my bubble, which I think my teacher was, at the time, Barry McGinley, was quite surprised at. But I went and I enjoyed that experience. I trained a handful of people, and that was great, but that was also my first step into Asia. And then I trained hard in the UK. I came towards the end of my time with my teacher here, but that teacher had traveled around Asia studying different martial arts, so I had that idea that could be a good thing to do. And so that's what I went and did next. I decided, so going to Wudang was the crown of the voyage, as it were. But before then, I wanted to look and see what else there was. When teaching in Thailand, on that short trip around the tsunami, I trained some Muay Thai. I loved that. And I also went to Shaolin and studied around the Shaolin temple briefly for a couple of weeks. But yeah, Kalaripayat was my main other art. There is definitely a version of me that went off and did that, because that is a great fun art as well. It's an Indian internal system, but it's fast and there's weapons. But I've just found in my own personal training, when I was on my own, I didn't end up training it so much. And I was still training Tai Chi all the while I was training Kalaripayat.
Yeah. And you've taught, I've read previous interviews of yours, and you described that point in Wudang where you kind of checked out a range of potential teachers and shifus, and you described that a kind of, again, quite an immediate sense of fit with Shifu Yuan Li Min. And would you be able to describe that moment when you felt like, yeah, this is the school for me, this is the master for me?
Sure. Well, it was after, I mean, at the time, I think I'd been to look at 8 or 9 schools, each of which had their own charms and qualities, but there was nothing that was completely all the way there for me. The one that came closest was actually one that felt like a fit for the heart, where there was kids in a school, and the conditions were quite threadbare, but they all trained together, everybody of different abilities. It had a real nice family feel to it. But I could see that the teachers there, each person was teaching their different specialized area. I could see that the teachers were not quite the, top level teachers. And so I called my teacher in the UK and asked for some guidance if there was anywhere he recommended, because I knew he'd been to Wudang, and he recommended Yuan Limian, but under his different name, a Taoist name, Ling Tongzi. So first of all, when I went to try and find him, he was hard to find. He was really hidden in the backwaters of a tiny tea village called Basiangguan. He wasn't easy to find. But when I did see him, yeah, I mean, he did look the deal. He really does look, he had a sort of a plait down to his knees and this cream silk suit on. And okay, well, this guy looks the business. Let's see, what else fits. And then I went to a training session that afternoon, and I saw how good his students were, because they were really top level practitioners themselves. So there was a very high level of skill on display. And I thought, yep, okay, this will do. If they'll have me, I would love to train in amongst this much talent. Yeah, that was a lovely moment. And when I actually chose, I made my decision. I sat down and thought about it for a bit, and actually I read the I Ching. I work with the I Ching quite a lot, and the I Ching imagery shows up sometimes for me in my dreams and other things like that. And I had some of that occur with Master Yuan. Some I Ching imagery came up that seemed to me to kind of suggest, okay, on an unconscious level, this is a good one for me. And yeah, I went along on a blazing hot day in June. It was so boiling hot. I had all my stuff with me, and everybody was asleep in the training room, because that was a basement and it was nice and cool. And there was Shifu in the middle, and two piles of students to either side. So I just went and sat at the bottom of the room and kind of laid down on my rucksack, distant from everybody else, but just sort of beneath at the back of the room here. And so when they woke up from their afternoon nap, they found me there. They're probably like, what's this Western woman doing in here? But yeah, that was it. That was the start of my journey.
And then could you kind of provide an overview of how you went from that point to setting up your own school back in London?
Well, I was supposed to stay for 3 months, first of all, but I loved it so much I stayed for 6. And then really my whole life revolved around getting back there. So that involves making choices about, employment, living situations, relationships, everything revolved around it. And it was that way for a number of years. And I think, yeah, then I went back another couple of times, studying for a few months. And then I decided to start teaching one-to-ones. Shifu encouraged me to do that. And that was the start of it, basically. I think by that time, that was probably around 2010, something like that, 2009. And I first went to Wudang in 2006. Started out teaching one-to-ones, built up my confidence, and then I opened my group classes in 2011, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And how would you? So if we just pause at this point. So from doing different things to, well, you described one body event where you got injured from a flashy kung fu style, and then going into Tai Chi and Calorie Payet and Muay Thai, and then deepening your practice in Wudang. What would be the kind of the main events in your body? Is it the diary of your body over these months and years? Were there big transition points in terms of changes in your body, in your physical abilities, in your health? Were there some hardships along the way?
I'd say on the whole, it's been quite gradual. The point where you can actually get past the blockage in the hips, I guess that's one I remember, where you can actually, you know, for what's commonly the snake creeps down movements, the low movements, that requires quite a lot of softening and opening of the hips. So being able to do that for the first time is something I recall that happened within the first 6 months of being in Wudang. And other than that, it tends to be a gradual process. I mean, I had a shoulder injury from a car crash that some sword helped to alleviate. Otherwise, it's a slow, steady boil of a process. There will be times when, in terms of physical changes, there are occasionally strange little things like I think my feet have got bigger. They kind of broaden out, the way that the shoulders just kind of drop and drop and drop until you get this kind of quite exaggerated shape, triangle shape there. And just in terms of sensitivity, the way I find that things happen actually is when you feel something, or something makes sense, and you get something happen and you're not sure why it's happened. Oh, I got that new sensation today. It just occurred, but it just happened the once, and I don't know why it happened, and I'm trying to make it happen again, and it won't. And it just happens once, you know, flashing up like a rabbit in amidst the grass. And then a while it'll just happen again, and you don't understand why, but then slowly but surely you figure it out and you learn what it is you're doing that is making this connection, or this sensation, and then you gradually master it. But yeah, those feelings when it just crops up randomly is nice. It can be a bit frustrating afterwards. You're like, but I want that again, but it's not quite like that. It takes time.